Ukraine is pushing global food prices sharply higher.
Global food crisis. Fears of a global food crisis. The two countries supply a third of the world's meat.
Wars and conflict, something we humans are pretty good at and never stopped doing it in our 10,000 years old history. It's a crisis where every party loses and no one really wins. There are always countless casualties, a lot of resources and money spent on what could be used for public beneficials, and endless destruction always on both sides. Of the last 3,400 years, there were only 268 years of peace, and are only the recorded wars count. That brings up the question why we even do wars and what such an innocent thing like wheat has to do with the Third World War. This is a story about human behavior, climate change and geopolitics.
World War III.
So let's go back to the first question. Why do we even start wars and conflicts with other countries when it has so many downsides, especially when it comes to world war? And for everything, even in this topic, there are several factors, but ultimately 5 main reasons. Empires or states fight over land to expand their territory, wars over religion, nationalism, revenge can also lead to a conflict, and then we have the economic wars over resources. For centuries, people have been fighting over precious metals such as gold, silver or more recently oil. And there are still wars going on, for example in the Congo, where people are fighting over metals such as cobalt or lithium. To clarify it better, we need to know how our brain or how humans works. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is describing it very well. If you attended an economic or psychology class, you probably have already seen this pyramid. As I already said, it displays the 5-stage model of our needs. It kinda shows how humans are programmed. At the bottom there are the basic needs like food, water, sleep, then safety needs, then belongingness and love needs, then esteem needs like prestige and feeling of accomplishments, and at the end self-actualization needs. To attain needs higher up, we must be satisfied with needs lower down in the hierarchy. If you meet a person who is trying to fulfill their first needs, they will fight for it, no matter what it will cost. That is why every government tries to bring up these basic needs for their people. Otherwise it comes with severe consequences. The French Revolution also happened because of that reason. If we have a wheat and a water shortage at a global scale, chances are very high for conflicts, also because wheat is so important for our nutrition. Wheat and other crops are a major source of starch and energy, and they provide us with notably protein, vitamins and phytochemicals which are essential for health. So why should a wheat shortage even happen in the first place? Right now we are at the peak of global food production and new technologies are improving our cultivation. But there are essentially 2 factors that might cause some trouble in the future: overpopulation and climate change. The population is growing from 8 to 10 billion people by 2050. There are then 2 billion additional mouths to feed and water. Already today around 800 million people are undernourished. To avoid a food shortage by 2050, the global community needs to produce 50% more food. Water will also be a huge issue, as already today 21 of 37 major water sources are distressed. Even rich countries like California and US have problems with water scarcity. But the much bigger concern will be climate change and global warming. Scientists estimate that the atmosphere will warm by 2.5 to 2 degrees by 2030. If we continue with the following trend, even 4 degrees are possible at the end of the century. That has severe consequences for our environment and our food production. Arid regions are getting drier. In regions with heavy precipitation there will be even more rainfall. It will lead to heavier extreme weather events and droughts. The weather will become more unpredictable and farmers are unable to grow crops. The already depleted water sources will be even more exploited. The best example is the Aral Lake. Countries around the equator will be most affected, especially regions in Africa, where around 1.2 billion people are being affected. Shortage of water and extreme weather events will lead to farmers being unable to produce wheat or other crops, which means no food for the population. It leads to forced migration. Greenpeace expects this could lead to a migration wave for 200 million climate refugees, which leads to conflict in immigration countries like Europe or also the US. Food and water become scarcer, which leads to higher prices and thus to inflation. A century with lots of civil unrest, revolutions and state-on-state struggle for control of basic commodities. It will be only a matter of time before we take up arms, which could lead to an never unprecedented war.